Hello there, and welcome to Gooner U, where there are no degrees because the learning never stops. I'm Dove, a TA here at Gooner U, and my friend Keith is our stalwart distinguished professor of Arsenal and football studies. Enter our classroom as we discuss the week's news involving Arsenal, Premier League, Champions League, and international football, all from the perspective of a couple Americans. This week featured Arsenal's first away match of the season, and second match overall, at Villa Park against Aston Villa. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Dove. Are you feeling as oddly satisfied tonight as I am?
Yeah, it's a little bit of retribution after the way the things went late last season. So,
and well, both times last season too. Villa was a particular thorn on our side,
right? And the second time was a little more recent in my memory.
Well, yeah,
I'd let the other one go a while back.
I did have to look that one up to remind me as well. But anyway, yes, it was a good weekend. It was a good weekend.
Yeah, so by way of follow-up, we actually neglected to mention something that we noticed when we were getting the name of the player with his hand on Kai Havertz's throat to record the short. I want to make sure that I mentioned it because it was the sole focus of the short. And in looking that up, we noticed, wait a second, it was the same guy who grabbed Jesus's bum and put his hand on Kai Havertz's throat. So we have Yerson Mosquera to thank for both of those topics of conversation around the globe.
We'll see you in the return fixture, or maybe not. I don't know if he's actually a regular starter for them. I don't know much about Wolves. So
yeah, me neither. Meanwhile, I want to thank two people who commented on our Bend It Like Beckham episode. You're part of tradition now. That was 3 episodes ago for us. They made comments that for some reason, as I went to look them up just now, I'm not seeing them. So I promise I didn't make it up. But to convey, one of them was follow up. And he said, the people beating up the cameramen were the couple that Mrs. Bonra saw making out. The cameraman must have filmed them hooking up, and that made them mad. So they're trying to probably get the video back at him to erase it, something like that, which makes sense. And if I'd seen the movie multiple times, maybe I'd pick up on something like that. That's a very funny bit if it turns out that is the reason. So
yeah, that was in the scene where a lot of things were cutting back and forth. So
exactly.
So kudos for the assist on that one. Comment guy.
I promise I didn't make it up. Yeah. Well, the username for that one was astanko1574. So if you're seeing that something's wrong with your comment and you want to post it again, and you happen to be watching this, please do so again. It was a useful comment, and it should be there for posterity. So, meanwhile, let's talk about kind of the crossover of news and follow-up. It's news that's kind of been an ongoing topic over the last few weeks. Transfers. What's going on with transfers?
Transfer window closes this week, end of August, because it's the end of August. Holy cow. On the incoming front, Mikel Merino it's not official, but apparently he is in London. Papers are being signed with Sociedad and everything like that. It looks like Mikel Merino is going to happen, which is very good news. Yay! So incoming player. Incoming player also means outgoing player. First, special shout out to already outgoing. Excuse me.
Bless you.
That wasn't who was outgoing.
Something was outgoing, but that was not a player.
Outgoing. Former Arsenal player Emile Smith-Rowe scored for Fulham in their game this past weekend, so good for him. Future outgoings. So Eddie Nketiah was going to Marseille. Just kidding, he's not. Maybe going to Forest. Apparently that deal is off as well. But maybe, and this was fun, this is on The Athletic, they were actually listed as 2 stories, right one after the other. The move to Forest is off, but there is potential interest from Crystal Palace. So, fingers crossed for Eddie that he gets somewhere, gets a chance to play.
I think, for his sake, Crystal Palace is probably a better team to play for than Forest.
Palace is probably likely to find themselves in a relegation fight as is. I say that, and Forest has a win and a draw in their opening matches. So, I could very well be proven horribly wrong about the trees, but maybe not. I don't know. It's also 2 games in. Speaking of fun with the standings, I did notice Ipswich Town looks like they're having a rough start to the season. We should point out, however, their first 2 games were against Liverpool and Manchester City, which just feels a little unfair.
Very, yeah. I saw the City beat them 4-1. Not fun.
Yeah.
But that wasn't actually the biggest score difference that I saw ticking by as we watched the match last night. I think Manchester United, if I'm remembering the matchup right, beat Everton 4-0. Someone beat someone else 4-0.
Yes, no, but United lost.
That's what it was. Okay, whoever beat United lost,
it was like 2-1 or something.
Yeah.
I think it was Brighton, which we'll save to the end to talk about Brighton. But anyway, Eddie Nketiah, hopefully for his sake, the Palace thing comes through, or somebody comes through so we can go play somewhere. Looks like Reece Nelson is not going to go anywhere. He was on the bench and actually came off the bench and played this weekend, which we'll talk about.
If you're substituting Saka and you don't want to play Nketiah, I guess Reece Nelson is one obvious choice. So.
Well, Nketiah is more of a central forward. Nelson's more of a winger. So he's when Saka comes off, it's really Nelson who's there. We should also add, I forgot to put this on our little our script, but Fabio Vieira was loaned back to Portugal. Forget which big Portuguese club, but he was loaned back to Portugal. Not a great sign for his Arsenal career. Hopefully he finds his game there and perhaps finds his. Maybe it's just a case where it never really worked out at Arsenal, which is too bad. But other news coming into the weekend: Gabriel Jesus was a late scratch, a slight groin injury. I say slight; that was the word used in the story. The initial indication is that he won't be out too long. He missed this weekend's game. Apparently, we'll probably miss next weekend's game, after which we have an international break. So, hopefully after that, my pick of Gabriel Jesus leading scorer does not look very good 2 weeks into the season. But we'll see. Long season ahead. Hopefully, this is not a long-term thing.
Yeah.
And then... That's looking back / looking ahead, a little bit of past news and present news. Looking ahead to this week, 2 draws coming up for other competitions. On Wednesday afternoon, we will have the draw for the 3rd round of the Carabao Cup, or the League Cup, the second-tier cup competition. So that'll be on Wednesday. Arsenal is, because we're in European competition, we'll get to come in at the 3rd round. And then we'll kind of see how that goes. So we'll see who we draw that one. Expect to see a rotated lineup, whoever ends up playing in that, which will be sometime in September. And then on Thursday morning, I believe it's about, if I read the story right, it's about 10 a.m. my time, 11 a.m. your time. So mid-morning, late morning, early, almost in the midday. The draw for the Champions League, which is going to be fun because it's going to be completely different this year. So, for the last, I don't know how long, for the last number of years, the Champions League has been 32 teams in the group stage, divided into groups of 4. Everyone plays everyone else in their group of 4 twice, home and away, 6 games. This year, they're doing away with that. They're going to have a giant league phase, as they're calling it. Which is going to contain every team in the Champions League, which is, hang on, I have the number here, 36 teams. These teams have been divided into into 4 pots. Arsenal, by the way, is in pot 2. And you will, in the course of the draw, apparently, this is where it got a little weird. So I gave you a little link to a video, which UEFA has. Basically, they're going to draw a team, and then a computer is going to do the sorting from there, which I guess makes sense. Where you will then be drawn against, I guess as they progress through the pots, drawn against 2 teams from each pot, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You'll get one game at home, 1 game away against each team you draw from each pot, meaning you will have 8 these league phase games for the Champions League. The rules I saw as they gave them, you cannot be drawn against a team in your own federation, so we won't see Liverpool or City or Aston Villa. And apparently you can only draw as a maximum of 2 teams from any other federation. So we can't draw, and I was looking, I guess there's Germany, there's or
Right.
Spain.
So we can't have the Germans ganging up on us, basically.
Yeah, or Italy, or
or vice versa.
Italy. Yeah, right, exactly.
Us ganging up on them.
So basically something to keep an eye on there. So just to quickly, here's what we have so far. So Tuesday and Wednesday of this week will be the final games of the last playoff stage. So the last, it looks like 7 spots will be given out for the Champions League. Into the pot. So 7 teams that still haven't qualified yet. Just quickly, Arsenal is in pot 2. All the pots, by the way, are ranked by their UEFA coefficient, which is some ranking number they're given based on past performance in UEFA competitions, usually over the last 5 years. We're in pot 2, along with Bayer Leverkusen, Atletico Madrid, Atalanta, Juventus, Benfica, Club Brugge, Shakhtar Donetsk, and Milan. Pot 1 contains the teams with the highest rankings, plus the winner of last year's Champions League, which is Real Madrid. Oddly enough, even though Real has won the title like 6 of the last 11 years, which is bonkers, they don't actually have the highest coefficient. And so, as usual, I have no idea how UEFA actually does these things. But they're in the first group: City, Bayern, PSG, Liverpool, Inter Milan, Dortmund, RB Leipzig, and Barcelona. So, we'll see 2 of those teams. We'll see 2 of the teams in our group. Plus 2 teams out of pot 3, which currently has Feyenoord, Sporting, PSV, and Celtic, and then 2 teams out of pot 4, which currently has Monaco, Aston Villa, Bologna, Girona, Stuttgart, Sturm Graz, and Brest. So honestly, I have no idea how this is going to go. Normally you could sort of you could kind of look with the groups and go, well, we want this team, or, out of the pot ones, we want maybe one of these 2. This one, again, we're taking 2 from each of them, so there's a lot of different ways it can go, home and away. We're going to find out a lot more when we get to, we'll find out a lot more when the draw is done.
Yep.
Notes on that, once that draw happens, and we'll talk about this more probably a little bit next week once that happens. Everyone then, there are no groups, there is just a giant table for all 36 teams. And the top 8 will advance automatically to the round of 16. The next 16 teams, so 9 to 16 and then 17 to 24, will then be matched up against each other in the first round of the knockout stage, I guess the second round of the tournament. The winners there will then go to the round of 16 with the teams that finished in the top 8. So ideally, you would finish in the top 8 and avoid that extra round of games.
Right.
Very much like the Europa League a couple of years ago.
Before we were in the Europa League, though.
Yeah, when we were in it.
When we were in it?
Now. Yes. Sort of like that in terms of not the single table part, but the part where there's some teams advance to the round of 16 automatically and the rest have a playoff to get
Okay,
through.
Yep. Okay.
We'll know a lot more when that gets drawn. I see no reason we can't finish in the top 8. And with the way this is set up, it a certain extent is to protect the big clubs in a lot of ways. There is zero reason we shouldn't be in the knockout rounds. Let's just leave it at that. But we'll know a little bit more by the end of the week once we see the actual draw. So the Champions League draw is this week. It's going to be interesting to watch, or if you don't want to watch because these things aren't that interesting to watch, you can just look it up later.
Tune into the next Gooner U, where we will surely be talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on in MLS with Leagues Cup?
The Leagues Cup final is ongoing as we speak, or I guess maybe is nope, it just ended. Wow, that was okay. Interesting. So Columbus just beat LAFC. Live breaking news for a show that's going up well after this.
In a few hours, yeah.
Columbus scored 2 goals in stoppage time to beat LAFC 3-1 in the final of Leagues Cup. So they win another trophy.
Wow.
The two of them, plus probably Miami, are probably the 3 best teams in MLS. Columbus has been on a serious heater. They're very good. They won at home. The other note from this game, from an Arsenal perspective, LAFC's goal was scored in his debut for the club by former Arsenal striker Olivier Giroud, and noted handsome Frenchman with a very meaty forehead. Excellent at a good striker, a good goal scorer. Apparently, he's the all-time leading scorer for France, and particularly with his head, excellent. excellent header of the ball when it comes to scoring goals.
So it's not just a clever observation; it actually is a functional part of his anatomy. Okay.
Yes. So congrats to the Columbus crew, and welcome to MLS, Olivier Giroud.
All right. So before we move on to the match at hand, I would like to tell you guys about something that we use in recording the show. It is a tool we've grown fond of called Zencastr. There are a few reasons that we use it. First is because it's so easy. It is now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. You just log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. You can record studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. It's an all-in-one solution, so if you've ever thought about podcasting before and gave up thinking you needed a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast all in one place and then distribute to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations. With Zencastr, you can also always sound your best. Have you ever worried what you sound like? Well, Zencastr's post-production process makes you sound smooth, like a big stick of butter. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording, and it removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. If we were using it for editing, you wouldn't hear that pause that I just made there. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. So if that sounds good to you, go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code Gooner, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all our podcasting and content needs. It's time for you to share your story. So the match. So we're recording a day earlier than we typically do. We usually record Monday evenings. We're recording on Sunday, August 25th right now. So this match just happened yesterday, Saturday, August 24th. This was a later than typical match. It started at 12:30 Eastern time. So Keith and I, you probably watched it live also, right? So we both watched it live. So that doesn't always happen.
Which is really just more, we should say it's more unusual for you to do that.
Correct. You typically do. I was just confirming for good order's sake. But yes, for me, it is far from the norm. It's more often than not, I watch it time shifted. So yeah. There's clearly a lot to talk about with this match. I think different angles across which we can dissect it and bisect it and figure out what happened. So in a good way, of course, breaking down our success. This was a match that we won 2-0. So
it is so much more fun when we win. I guess we'll start with the lineup, right?
Yeah.
Only one change from the opening day. Jurrien Timber came in for Alexander Zinchenko.
Right.
And then, of course, we mentioned Jesus was a late drop from the bench. Apparently he was not going to start anyway.
Right, okay.
But it appears, Timber came in for Zinchenko. And it's sort of something we've kind of anticipated, or at least certainly, maybe not necessarily on that side. Timber's been talked about as a center back, also as a right back. I don't know how long this will be, but it is kind of interesting that after one game, he came in. For Zinchenko. I mean, when you saw that, and I know, and partly because of where you're watching compared to where I'm watching, you get a little bit more of the commentary. Was much made of that in some of the pregame?
I actually didn't have the volume up as loud this time on the commentary, so I didn't hear as much. Okay. But I mean, to me as an observer, it's not really that surprising. It just seemed like this is what Arteta probably would have been doing last season, given the opportunity. He just didn't get the opportunity. I mean, he came in, this is long enough ago now, I'm not really remembering, in the first match of a season when he got injured, he started then, I think, right?
Yeah.
So he came in as a starter in his first match on the roster. So it's not crazy that he would be working him into the regular lineup. That was clearly what he had in mind. So it didn't surprise me.
No, yeah, I think that's largely right. I mean, we sort of talked about Zinchenko. I don't want to say it feels like there's a clock left on his time here at the club, but certainly I think there's a sense that he's at this point ideally is going to be more of a bench player. And some of that I think is a little unfair. He gets a lot of criticism for his defense, which, let's be honest, is not is a weakness for him, which is a weird thing to say about a defensive player. But obviously Timber, but Zinchenko does offer a lot going forward, and you see Timber trying to play that similar position, the inverted fullback, especially from the left side, where Zinchenko drifts into the midfield and can do so much there. Timber, it doesn't have quite the same skill set, so it's not really a like for like substitution in that regard.
Sure.
But I do think overall, right, that's sort of the continued evolution of the squad. I think this is a little bit closer to what we'll see. Although, again, we'll talk about this more. Well, I guess we'll get into this, talk about the substitutions as well, right? I mean...
Well, yeah.
because then late in the game, Timber is subbed off for Calafiore. I think Timber is still not 100%, so he's not going to be seen as a 90-minute player just yet. But he had, and I saw some afterwards, some criticism of his game. Again, defensively, he was much more solid, but going forward, not quite as... I didn't see him as being quite as involved or effectively involved offensively. In a game where, for a good chunk of it, certainly most of the first half, and then parts of the second half, we dominated possession, which leads to us playing very high up the field, which I think was maybe... And based on some of the comments Arteta made, particularly about Martinelli and Trossard, I think it was a little surprised at how deep where Aston Villa was sitting as opposed to where he expected them to be defensively.
Sure.
But
yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
But I guess, I don't know. I was going to move on with subs, but if you had something.
Well, yeah, no, I guess while we're talking about Calafiore, though, so this is the first time that we've seen him play with Arsenal, at least. And what do you think?
He didn't do a lot. He
didn't have a lot of time to do a lot. Yeah,
right. He came on. I think it was just a chance to sort of get his legs under him. I thought he was fine. I did enjoy him getting into it with Martinez a little bit at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
That was interesting to me. That as you watch the exchange unfold, it gave me a very good first impression of this guy. Like, he clearly bumped into Emi Martinez accidentally. He kind of tried, help. I don't think he knocked him over. Just kind of patting him on the back, apologizing, it was an accident. He's grinning, and then I forget who it was. Another Villa player just kind of knocked him, shoved him or shoulder dropped him, whatever he did, and he was still just kind of smiling, dude, what are you doing?
Oh, you're being far too kind to Calafiore. He knew exactly what everything about that. The hand on Martinez. That was all about time wasting. Nothing about that was about. That is the reason the Villa players got so upset is because they want to move the ball. They want to throw the ball back and get going. And all of that. Oh, I'm so sorry. Come here. Let's talk about this. No, get out of my way. I'm trying to play the game. That's what's going. Yeah, no, Calafiore. That's the what is it? The I can't call it impish because imps are small and Calafiore is quite large. Yeah, that's a I know what I'm doing.
Well, I guess that's another reason to like him. Then is he came across well while doing that.
That's a Benjamin White move right there. That's what that is. He knew what he was. He knew exactly what he was doing, and we're gonna love him for it. But overall, defensively, I thought he was fine. He wasn't asked to do a whole lot at that point. Solid defensive performance from him and from really everybody. Overall, well, a little bit. I think one thing we should look at and take away from this, in a lot of ways, this wasn't, I think, terribly different than the game we played against them at home. The one loss we have in the league since the turn of the new year, which, by the way, that's a bonkers thing to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the one thing, last time we played well in possession. We didn't generate too many chances, but we got a few chances, but we couldn't convert, and Villa was able to beat us on the break. This game was in some ways the opposite. We had a lot of possession. It wasn't empty possession, but it wasn't. You could tell we were having difficulty carving out really good scoring chances, and there was always the chance that Villa would be able to break on the counter, and they did a couple of times. They caught us sleeping a couple of times defensively, and wound up with, we'll talk about us finishing our chances, but particularly Ollie Watkins, who had himself a really good season last year, played for England in the Euros, probably should have started for them, but missed two absolute sitters. It could have easily been 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, one of which we were extremely lucky, and another one, David Raya saves everyone's bacon.
Mm-hmm.
We spent, what was it last week? You said, yeah, wow, man, can you imagine the save of the year in the first game? Well, it wasn't the save of the year because that was. I think there were just a handful of, it was crowded out. It was midday, so the pub was a bit crowded, but half of us, including myself, after that save, were just like,
well, and before you see the replays too, it looks like he had back-to-back saves, right? When you see the replay, you see that his hand didn't actually make contact the first time around. It went over his hand, but his hand was positioned such that if the ball weren't going to hit the crossbar, he would have probably deflected it high anyways.
Yeah, it did appear he might have gotten a tiny touch to it, but yeah, you're right. I think it did go straight to the bar. But even then, to recover as quickly as he did and get a hand on, and Watkins, I don't think gets. I mean, he heads it in kind of awkwardly, but I think it's I think it's the best he can do in that circumstance. That save is still bonkers. I can't. I almost can't believe he made it. It's wow.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that you can imagine like in a nightmare, like the ground just like turns to mud underneath your feet and you just can't spring up in enough time, right? Yeah. Like where it may come down to the quality of his cleats. Like you need such good grip on the ground from such a severe angle to push sideways. Like
and just the recovery. And is that ball exactly where Watkins wants it? No. I mean, if he could do it again, he'd probably try to settle it and kick it. Settle and kick it in. But he's broken completely free of the defense. There were nobody around.
Right.
In fact, I think the closest player to him was another Villa attacker. They had us completely out of sorts there. I believe that first ball was deflected. But yeah, man. Not.
Yeah, that was. Wow. So yeah, Riot. So
again. Fine margins. Fine margins. Yep. Because what happens in the second half? But we make a substitution. Martinelli, who I don't know. What did you think of Martinelli's performance?
Well, he had at least one good break that I can remember but it didn't end up coming to anything. He wasn't able to do anything with it, but he ran the ball down and got close to being able to score, and they ended up getting it away from him. But not his best performance, clearly. And I don't think Arteta thought so either. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of it he described in the postgame. Arteta did as Villa did not set up defensively quite the same way the way he expected. I think he was comparing them to the past ways they've set up at home, not just against Arsenal, but against other opponents as well. And they were, I think, deeper. Martinelli, of course, is probably his speed is his best asset. So to be able to bomb down the wing and run at defenders, which he wasn't really able to do as much here because they were already so much deeper.
Right.
I mean, overall, I thought that defensively they were very sound. Villa, on the other side, it looked like Saka was constantly facing a double team.
Yep.
And there were times where Odegaard, and White were able to sort of pass their way out of it, but still, it clearly took a lot to get them there. And most of the shots they were taking in the first half really were coming from that. That horseshoe of death, right? Maybe not quite that far, but definitely like the edge of the box. Whereas, of course, you want to be, a lot closer to get those shots in.
Of course, yeah.
But then Martinelli comes off, Trossard comes on, and who needs
what
time?
A difference? Yep.
Well, I don't know that it was such a difference. I mean, given how long he was on the pitch, he didn't really do anything until that, except be in the right position to sweep it home.
Yeah, but. Yeah, but that's what I don't know that Martinelli would have found that opening in the way that Trossard did, right? He may have, but
possibly.
You can't say you'll never be able to say for sure one or another, but he was just kind of moving around and found the space, where it made sense for the ball to go. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, he has a good sense for that. I think also you get to the point where we talk about being on the edge of the box. If you can start to collapse that a little bit, Saka's making a run into the box. And part of what you do is collapse things down. It creates a little chaos, so the ball starts to bounce around.
Sure.
And there was another instance late where Odegaard just plowed it into the stands, but there was one like the ball kind of was like sitting in the box and he was able to get to it.
Yeah, he blew that one.
Yeah, right. I mean, like we talk about Watkins missing his 2 chances.
Yeah.
I still don't know how he missed the first. I mean, the first one even incredible. Well, I have a theory as to why he missed the first one, but again, they blew those. But then Odegaard blew a similar one, late as well. So,
yeah.
Credit for Trossard to being there. And did you enjoy the non-celebration that he gave there?
Yeah, I've never seen anything quite like it. I mean, just like completely stubbornly stone-faced. All of his teammates are like rubbing him on the chest, petting him on the back, picking him up, hoisting him up, and like just nothing on his face at all. Just like, see, Arteta, this is why I should have been out here all match. First time my foot touches the ball and it's in the net, it's...
Yeah. Right, and it does kind of raise an interesting question, I think. Like, going forward, Trossard, is Trossard really the guy who should be starting there? I mean, Martinelli, I think, is the preferred starter. We've seen that this season. Yeah. Even last season, Trossard didn't start because Arteta wanted to start him. I think it was because Martinelli was hurt.
Right.
He had the cut in his foot. But I wonder if we're getting to that point where, especially if teams, if Villa's going to play us that deep, outside of City.
Yeah.
And maybe, Liverpool is going to be on the front foot. Spurs will probably try. But there aren't a lot of teams necessarily that'll be on the front foot or are going to be more up forward. I mean, maybe we're going to see a couple of them. We're looking ahead, Brighton, Spurs, City, like that. So maybe we're in a position where the sort of thing that could happen. But yeah, that's that's an interesting one for me to consider Trossard starting over Martinelli because he's the better option, which is not something that we've really seen.
No,
just something to watch for, I guess, in the weeks to come.
Before we leave the Trossard goal, just a question: how well do you remember the build up to that after the ball left Saka's foot?
Not terribly. It got a little chaotic at that point.
Yeah. So in looking at the replays, I guess my question was a pretty nuanced one, so you may not be able to answer if you don't remember exactly. But Saka crossed, it passed by Havertz, and Havertz just kind of nudged it on with his foot, like a tap, like barely even changing its direction at all, maybe giving it a little more oomph, maybe just confusing, like maybe Villa thought he would take it, so maybe it threw them off a little bit. Do you know, could you see actually who got the assist on that? That's what I was curious about. Did Saka get a primary or secondary assist? Like, did Kai Havertz get the assist on it?
I haven't seen a score sheet, so I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
I can tell you in hockey, the way you've described it is correct. I don't know. I feel like in soccer, there might be a little more discretion.
Okay.
That secondary assist will sometimes call a hockey assist because hockey actually tracks those, who score, who picks up those assists. And in that instance, yes, it would, in hockey, that would be scored as Trossard from Havertz and Saka. I don't know. So I just looked it up. And so there was no assist given on that goal, at least per the Premier League's website. No assist given on that goal. Saka did pick up an assist, however, on this second goal, which was from Thomas Partey, who normally is quite known when he shoots for plowing the ball into the second deck. Did not do that on any of his shots this time. Actually, a couple of them are close. And then finally the final one there, off the hand of Emi Martinez in 2-0 to the Arsenal.
Yeah, I think Martinez wishes he could do that one over again. he was not happy when that one got by him.
Oh, Emi Martinez. On the one hand, former gunner, was the keeper for when we won the FA Cup in 2020. So we'll always have that. Since then, has been a bit pointed in his comments about Arsenal. Clearly feels a little miffed about the way he left and the chances he was given or not given, as it were. Which at a certain point, is professional athlete. These guys are, absurdly competitive people. But at a certain point, you're not a former Arsenal keeper. You're a current Aston Villa keeper, and you've also won the World Cup, and maybe just calm down, And so and it's a guy who is quite capable of drawing attention to himself. It isn't as satisfying as Jorginho scoring off of his head I still remember that.
I'd forgotten. Thank you for the reminder.
But yes, he got a hand to it, and Partey shot just kind of just pushed right past it. And so big ups to Thomas Partey, who I thought, by the way, had a very good game today, or I guess in yesterday's game, had a very good game.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So with the assist though on Trossard's goal, so no assist credit, which is crazy to me because it was a one-touch goal. I mean, I guess they're just considering it to have been a dead ball that he kicked. That's kind of crazy to me.
As I said, I'm not quite sure how those are determined. I know in basketball there's a certain degree of discretion as far as the pass setting up a shot as opposed to making a pass and then you decide to dribble to the lane and spin off a defender and float it in yourself. That's not an assist.
Right.
Whereas in hockey, as the comparison, as I said, like if I touch the puck and then you score and no one touches in between, I get an assist.
Right.
So it's clearly not quite as simple as that. I don't really know how they approach that in terms of keeping the score. But Saka gets the only assist of the day, and it's on Partey's goal, not. And there was no assist, at least according to the Premier League's website. Yeah. There is no assist on the Trossard goal.
So you've talked before about how there are certain key moments in a game that can kind of go either way, and it can only take like sometimes one or two of those shots that go wide or bang off a crossbar or get blocked or whatever to turn the tide of a game. What do you think those were in this match?
Well, I think it's pretty straightforward. Ollie Watkins had two opportunities to score and put Aston Villa 1-0 or perhaps 2-0 up, and he missed. Well, he missed one, egregiously bad, and then the fantastic Raya save.
Right.
But then in the other opportunity, Arsenal generated some chances. Trossard gets the touch and powers it home. Partey gets one, gets off the hands of Emi Martinez, and I'm not going to say it was over at 2-0. Not quite like with the Wolves game. It was definitely over at 2-0, but it wasn't quite over. But it was definitely, once you're up 2-0, that really does kind of change the tenor of the match. I think in a way that you aren't getting 1-0. And it was a tense game. We had quite a reaction from the Trossard goal. This to me was a very interesting game. There's a lot of tension. Certainly a very physical game. We talked about how Arsenal's a very big team, right? They have a lot of taller players, bigger players. Villa's one of the few who aren't going to be necessarily intimidated by that because they also have some very big players as well. You saw them lining up pregame. They're a bigger team too, and so it was a game, I think, that sort of reflected that. I think both teams were certainly not afraid of being very physical throughout. And, again, it was tight. We didn't convert a couple of chances in the game last year, and they were able to beat us on the counter or last season, so earlier this calendar year. But then tonight, or in the game this weekend for this season, they whiff a couple of those chances early, and then we convert there in the 67th minute was the Trossard breakthrough. So, that's the kind of thing you talk about there, where you have those opportunities, especially if they come back to haunt you. It does feel like we've had some instances where the other team, especially last season, we'd have moments where the other team would generate some opportunities, they'd hit the post, and then it seemed like it was only a few minutes before they found the actual range and put it in. And now we're not seeing that necessarily this season, sort of cutting those chances off, but also, they aren't taking them. Our opponents, Wolves and Villa to this point, haven't taken them very well, but we have. We've put in those chances, especially Villa, as we talked about, was so hard to carve out some of those opportunities that when we finally did, like at some point I felt myself saying, like, we just need one clean look. Think about how many times we were shooting through bodies or from distance. We needed one clean look at the goal. We didn't really get it. Trossard's kind of just punched it in from a bit of a scramble. But there it is. It's 1-0 and we're off. And then Partey's was a bit more of a clearer look on goal.
Yeah, no, it was good. I was happy for Partey when that one went in, because I can't remember the last time he scored. I mean, I think as I was watching the highlights earlier today, they said something like a year and a half or so since his last goal, which Sounds about right.
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, to be fair, for a good chunk of that, he was injured, which is
Sure.
also an important part of the Thomas Partey story, or the Partey at Arsenal story, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a while since he was able to get one in. I thought it was a nice cap on what I know I've mentioned already, but I thought it was a really good performance. I thought he was very good today, very good during the game. I keep saying today. The game was yesterday. I do know that.
Yes.
I don't know why I'm saying today, but anyway.
Because you want to savor it. You're living in the moment.
Yeah.
So it's interesting at this point in the season. So we've had 2 matches, 2 goals each, 4 goals, 4 shooters, right? Which it's just that feels right for how Arsenal has been the last few years. One interesting constant, though, and maybe not officially relayed in the stats, but Saka involved in all 4 of them, though. The one that he shot, and then the 3 that had credited or uncredited assists. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal's not going to be the kind of team that's going to have the talisman score, right? We don't have an Erling Haaland, we don't have a Mo Salah, we don't have a guy or even an Ollie Watkins.
Right, I was going to say, I saw that they have like a 4-2-3-1 formation with Ollie Watkins up top, similar to City with Haaland, yeah.
Right, yeah, we don't have that player whose job it is to score a whole bunch of goals. I mean, that was one of the criticisms of Haaland when he came into City. He doesn't really play the way City plays, and how are they going to adjust to it? And the answer to that was, who cares? He scores a bunch of goals. They'll figure out the rest of it. But Arsenal doesn't have that kind of player who can necessarily do that. Now, I suppose it's possible maybe Bukayo Saka turns into that guy. You talk about his involvement. I mean, part of it is, I think, that's just kind of how it's developed to this point in the season. But another part of that is, again, recognizing the talent that he is and the talent that he has and the things he's able to do as a player. And it could just be that he's just on a heater right now, that he's just on a streak, and he's got, some of his passes have found players and they finished. Maybe you can play an excellent game and not get on the score sheet, but obviously to do that like he did last week, to be really good, but then also pick up the goal and the assist, I think speaks to his quality overall.
So do you think part of why Saka maybe himself didn't score but had contributions to both goals this match, was it maybe because of the way that he was getting double teamed, he wasn't able to get into good position to score, but he's good enough to still get the ball to somebody else who isn't being as tightly covered?
No, I think that's just he's playing his game. I mean, his game is to sort of do everything. Sometimes it's to look for the crosses, sometimes it's to cut in and take the shot himself. I think because of the double teams, that doesn't make it any easier to make a pass, right? The whole point is that it makes it harder for you to do anything. And so again, I think
true, yep.
So I do think it's a measure of his ability that even when double teamed the way he is, he's able to find space or create opportunities either for himself or for his teammates. So in that sense, I just think it's just, again, another testament to his abilities.
Yeah. All right, so I understand we have an editorial policy that is pushing us away from commenting about the officiating of each match. However, there are certain key events that may happen in any given match, such as a ball getting kicked directly at a player who is on the ground, that may warrant some discussion about the officiating.
So I'll say this again. I'm trying not to. It's my new season resolution. We talk a little bit. Again, most cases it doesn't really egregiously affect the match, and you don't want to get into a point where you're just whining about the referees and their quality and all of that. Let's just say that when I saw who the official for the game was, that was tested. There were words uttered that I cannot repeat on this podcast or this show. It's a family friendly show.
So, namely, we're talking about Michael Oliver, right?
Yes. And I was right in the sense that, yes. So the play we're talking about, in particular involved a tussle involving William Saliba. And then I don't remember if it was the ball that was kicked into him or he got kicked or pushed or something and went down. At which point the ball fell to Benjamin White, who then proceeded to kick it directly into an Aston Villa player.
Now
I'm laughing.
That's not how I'm remembering that, actually.
Oh, we know. Well, how are you remembering?
I remember Saliba on the ground, and it was a Villa player who kicked it directly into Saliba.
Are we talking about the same play?
Maybe not. Maybe this happened twice in the same match.
It was a bit in the first. It was a bit in the first half, and it ended with no cards given. But Ben White definitely fired a ball into a Villa player, which I'm pretty sure came out. Yeah, it did come after a collision or a little tete-a-tete involving Saliba and a Villa player. And anyway, in the midst, it led to a whole bunch of like shouting, guys coming together, a little bit of pushing, and all.
Yeah.
And the only thing I'll say about that is stuff like that happens when the referees lost control of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And to that point, for that to come fairly early, it was still the first half. And for that to come in the first half, yes, it was a tense game. Yes, emotions were definitely high. Certainly, Villa was arguably the Villa result maybe cost Arsenal the title. It's a little simplistic to say that, but there's obviously a lot of tension there. Villa's not afraid to play physical. We're not afraid to play physical, and so as that's all playing out, to me, that's the sort of thing when that sort of thing happens, even early on in the game. It came after a series of physical plays that were inconsistently called.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the Watkins missing his first chance after the awful giveaway. I'm sorry, that was a foul. Gabriel was very blatantly fouled in that buildup, which is how the ball. And I think Watkins shanked it in part because he didn't realize, why would this be a chance? That was clearly a foul. I think that was what was in his head when he missed it. Honestly,
yeah.
Again, it didn't end up having an impact in the game. Arsenal was the better team throughout the game. They carved out the chances and took their chances. Villa, whiffed on the couple they got. But I did not come away particularly enthralled with the officiating. And that moment there is the kind of thing you kind of point to and say, okay, that there is a sign that this is not being particularly well officiated, as opposed to, I just didn't like certain calls. I mean, but that to me says the players are seeing something, which is always, or feeling something uncertain, which is always a little bit different than as fans, we take things a certain way.
So real-time follow-up. I just watched this. I went to Peacock while you were talking and watched it again, and I had completely missed the aftermath, probably because I was taking notes about what I had already seen happen, not realizing how much more was going to happen. So sending it back and blow by blow. So Watkins and Saliba were tussling at the corner post, right? Mm-hmm. Saliba kept it from becoming a goal kick or whatever would have happened, right?
Out, yeah.
And so then Watkins knocked him over. The ball knocked, maybe too strong a word. Their contact caused him to fall over. It didn't look like it was necessarily intentional.
He kind of swiped at him and kind of...
a little bit, yeah. So then McGinn gets the ball. The ball rolls to McGinn. McGinn blasts it off of Saliba's chest, and it rolls toward Ben White's feet. Benjamin White then blasts it back at McGinn. It bounces off of McGinn and back into Benjamin White's chest before they all converged and stared going at each other's throats, metaphorically, which we have to specify because of the literal going after throats last match.
That was, and again, that's the kind of thing when that goes on. That's something the referee, I think there were a handful of things that were let go early on that maybe probably shouldn't have been. And I'm not saying this in a particular, the referee was biased or anything like that. I think it's just, I don't want to go off on this too long.
Yeah.
But stuff like that, it's kind of funny and you can laugh about it, but that shouldn't be happening. That's kind of thing that really shouldn't be happening.
Yeah. All right. So let's head over to Formation Station. So for this match, I think it would be interesting to talk about Jurrien Timber and perhaps how he and Zinchenko each kind of cover the left side of the defensive area. Mm-hmm. So what's going on there?
So one of the things that Arsenal does that's a little different than other teams is they, especially on the left side, well, it's not different from other teams. They do what that's called the inverted fullback, where he isn't running necessarily up and down the wing, but he's cutting in, and you see it a lot with Zinchenko, and it's kind of like he's kind of pioneered that role under Arteta in a way that like Kieran Tierney, for example, couldn't really do, because Zinchenko he's listed as a defender. He's kind of more of a midfielder at heart. But the way he drifts from the left back position into the center part of the field, and from there acts as a distributing offensive midfielder, playmaker. We've seen it, Arteta try that with Kieran Tierney. We saw it a little bit as well with Yuri and Timber. Now, the counterpoint to the Zinchenko story is that as he's drifting forward, that leaves some space in behind, and tracking back, he's not as good at tracking back, and his defensive play leaves some things to be desired, which again, not a great thing to say about someone you're calling a defender.
Mm-hmm.
Timber certainly was much better in the defensive set when he was coming back and making plays. And there were times he and a few other Arsenal players too that kind of muscled off the ball, but he was coming back making defensive plays. But going forward, he doesn't have the same kind of distributive quality that Zinchenko does. And some of that's going to be, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out going forward, since as we kind of suspected, Timber's probably going to end up being more the regular starter, or probably more likely to get more playing time than Zinchenko will. And I wonder how that'll go forward. Presumably the idea is he will develop those skills of distribution and passing. Or perhaps do you maybe, because we've talked about him as a guy on the other side of the field, could you then start switching guys around and maybe do things from different angles, as opposed to there are some predictable elements to Arsenal. We do a lot of stuff down the right-hand side with Odegaard, White, and Saka. You have Martinelli kind of bombing up and down the wing, and that side is Zinchenko on the left, drifting into the center. Rice sort of pushing forward or dropping back. There are some predictable patterns to our play, and I wonder if that next evolution sees us try different things. Not necessarily, or maybe trying it from different angles. So having, putting Timber at right back and having him drift into the center. Maybe Benjamin White plays a center back, and we can rest a Saliba or a Gabriel someday. While Calafiore is a little, I haven't seen enough of Calafiore to say if he's more capable going forward. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops along the back line and what they do with that.
Yeah, definitely. Also related to formations, one minor question. So I was just wondering, when I was thinking about how they always show the formation graphic on screen, showing, players arranged on the pitch, in their rough position on the field, when the manager, so Mikel Arteta, when he submits the roster for the game and he says, okay, this is our starting 11, is it just a list of names and the rest is kind of inferred by the broadcast team and everyone else based on Arsenal history? Or is he giving them like a kind of filled out diagram, like, okay, so for our 4-3-3 formation, left to right in the defense, midfield, and forward lines, we have these players? Like, how do you think that looks?
So he's definitely not sketching it out for them like that.
Okay.
I do think, I admit I'm not sure what it actually explicitly looks like, but I imagine it is a list. Now, he may also list positions, but how much, I don't know how much of that, because the problem is I only ever see it through the TV broadcast, which is always done things a particular way. And usually it is the list of names. Now, they'll, of course, project the graphic up. I think a lot of that, though, is inference. Now, I think there's a certain order. It's typically keeper, defenders, midfielders, and forwards. So sometimes you can make judgments based on, he's a midfielder, but he's actually listed like last season when Thomas Partey was starting at right back. He is a midfielder, but he's actually listed back with the defenders. And also we notice that, this person's sitting, and, Gabriel's sitting, and so White is now in defense also. But I guess that means then you watch them go out in the field. You can see Partey at right back and White at a center back. A lot of it, I think, also stems from inference and sort of having watched Arsenal. It's one of those, once they change the formation, well, now we've seen it. Or even if it's not a change necessarily that's illustrated on the screen, but perhaps, a substitute gets brought on, and now we see this is how they lined up. And you can, we'll talk about maybe going 3 in the back, or perhaps you see, 2 guys forward, or, someone goes out to the wing while another player shifts inside or switching sides. So you start to see how they play when different combinations are on the field. And that, I think, is where a lot of that comes from. Arteta's not writing down anywhere 4-3-3. That's, I
Right.
think. And again, a lot of it just comes from sort of watching how Arsenal lines up. And the same with all these other teams, watching how they line up, how they play, and also managers as well, and knowing a lot about their histories and the formation. Most managers have a formation that they like to use for all kinds of reasons. They're able to develop that. And as we talked about, even the idea of the formation and the rigid positions associated with is kind of very much going out of favor because we're starting to see a lot more, and as Arteta's talked about, there's the formation you start in, but then there's your formation in attack. There's the one in the counter, the defense. There's all these different game situations where things are different. So, yeah, I think what it is just here are the 11 guys that we have on the field, and then here are the other guys who are on our bench.
And the name that you gave for the way that Zinchenko typically plays, it's the inverted what?
Fullback.
Inverted fullback.
So the fullbacks the fullbacks are the defenders who are on the out wide. As opposed to, you see the central defender, sometimes they're also called that halfback, so the center halves.
Yep.
So half full.
Okay. Cool. All right. Who was your player of the match?
I hinted at this earlier. Well, first off, shout out to William Saliba, who I thought was very good overall, had an excellent play chasing down a guy. But for me, the player of the game, I'm going to say, is Thomas Partey. I thought he was very good in the center of the field. Good defensively. I thought Declan Rice did not have a particularly good game, actually. And again, he's still getting himself back into shape not into shape. He's, working his back from his time off with England and the Euros and all of that. But I thought Partey was very good. Good for longer too. We talked about him last time. Maybe he's not a 90-minute player. Well, he played. I think he went 90 again today yesterday, and held up longer in the game. Yeah, he had a moment where he was muscled off the ball at midfield, but so did pretty much everybody else. Rodgers for Villa was very good in the middle of the field. He was a problem. He could very well wind up at a bigger club very soon. Not in this transfer window, but so there's could be some serious money splashed out for him that Villa might have to think about. But, I thought Partey was very good defensively. I thought the goal, his shots, we talked about this, he wasn't sending them all out of the stadium, but they were on goal or close to goal. And I think the goal was well deserved as sort of a good finish to, really kind of put a stamp on the game. So I'm going to say Partey is player of the game.
Okay, so you sniped me there. I was going to pick Partey too. He definitely deserves the recognition. But another player also deserves recognition, and this is who I assumed you would pick, and so I'm going to pick him instead. But Trossard, that was I don't know if I've ever seen another player have his first touch on the ball in a match result in a goal. That's crazy. It's got to be pretty rare.
It happens. Yeah. But you're right. Again, I've been watching the sport for 20 years. You haven't yet. Actually longer than that if I think about it. But yeah, it happens. But it is always fun when it does happen. But yeah.
So. And it was just such a big moment in the game. Not only the skill of the goal and getting to the position to be able to take that shot and finish, but the momentum swing afforded by that, and everything changed after that for us. It was a huge moment in the game. So I wanted to call him out there, and obviously shout out to Saka for his involvement in both of those goals, as mentioned previously. So. All right. We have been pushing something off for a few weeks now. Do you want to do this YouTube video that I will watch and react to?
Sure.
Right.
Do you want much in the way of introduction, or we're just going to let it run?
I don't feel like any of it. You've seen it and I haven't, so I defer to you.
Well, so I'll say it is meant to be comedic. It is a piece of a sketch done by one of Britain's many comedic groups. In this case, a pair, Mitchell and Webb. Which if those of you who are watching know the sketch, but I'll let Dove introduce this one to himself.
So in the main video, we will cut back as soon as I'm done watching it. But if you want to see my reaction live, I'm going to try for the first time putting together some kind of reaction video where you see my face in a little picture-in-picture box reacting to this video as it happens or something. I don't know what to expect, so we'll find out. So I'm pulling it up now. Yeah. Yeah, so I can't say that I have seen precisely what that is parodying before, but it is kind of funny, the sameness to sports coverage over the years and probably millennia.
Yeah, that's basically. I mean, it references Sky Sports, who's one of the lead broadcasters, and really sort of one of the driving forces behind the creation of the Premier League, which is part of the larger Rupert Murdoch media empire. So bears a lot of similarities to Fox and their coverage of sporting events. I mean, to me, it was a lot of similarities there, and sort of the kind of absurd stake raising they do for for NFL games in particular, which I think is the closest comparison in terms of broadcast with the Premier League.
So all of those matchups that he listed, were those all actually real teams? I recognized Ipswich and I think Sunderland. Yeah, those were all real.
Oh, yeah. So I think he drops Newcastle and Manchester United in there. Like I may have missed those.
Oh,
yes. They're all. I mean, it wouldn't work if he. I mean, again, it's originally for an English audience, and like they know these names. Like it wouldn't work if you were making them up. I mean, I suppose there could be a subtle joke in there about making up a team, but like. Hinting, just kidding, that one's not real, but
I could see like making up, like listing maybe towns that are so small they don't even have teams or something like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah,
but no, all of those are real, and I enjoy it in part because of sort of the escalating nature of it, but also, I mean, you think about it, we're now in the third season of this. We just came off the summer with Euros and the Copa America and the Olympics, and there's just that sort of constant churn. There's always more games, and that. Presumably mattering to someone somewhere, or a line that I have used in other contexts. A line that I have used in other contexts, and I think maybe even used it on here. A game that it's already being described as on television.
Yeah. So there's some that are happening this weekend. Like that is the key attribute of them, is that they are happening this weekend. Yeah, it was funny. That was I guess 16 years ago that came out. So hardly new.
I've seen them for a while.
One other quick dessert topic. What did you think of these jerseys? Seeing them on the players, like on the field,
the black ones.
The Ian Wright designed or co-designed the jerseys. Yeah,
the general vibes were not good. Like the general reaction, at least the group I was in, and I've said this well, I'm not a huge fan. I think they'd be a little better without the zebra stripes, or I think they're zebra stripes with the black, the areas where it's the black and white. Those are a little forced in due to the template that Adidas is using, but they're not. I don't think that we've had better efforts at black kits. Out of the one a couple of years, was it 2 years ago with the black with the gold trim? That actually that's probably the best black one I've seen them use.
I was not a fan of that one at the time, but I do prefer it over this one.
Yeah, the general sense is that this year's kits aren't great. The reaction to the third one has been largely positive, but a good chunk of that is it's the best of the lot. Not so much that it's good on its own, right? But that it's definitely better than the home kit and than any of the home or away. But
right.
But as we pointed out, they're going to look awesome when we lift a trophy in them. So there's that too.
Yeah, it is interesting. The black one and the home jersey are both the same template. They have those same swooshy stripes going down from the jersey onto the shorts and stuff. So yeah,
that's Adidas's template for this year. We saw a lot of it in the international, in the summer tournaments for the national teams.
Okay. All right. So what's coming up next week?
So quickly, as we mentioned already, Carabao Cup draw Wednesday afternoon after the conclusion of the last of the second round games. Champions League draw will be Thursday in the morning. That's in the morning US time. So look forward to both of those. And then as far as the Arsenal, on Saturday, we're back at home against Brighton, who is ahead of us in the table. The Seagulls off to a nice start, 2 wins from 2, same record as us, Liverpool, and City. So not an easy one. We are, other than Wolves at the start, our schedule is not easy to begin the season with Villa away, Brighton, And then, of course, after that, we get an international break, and then it's at Spurs and at City with our Champions League opener right between. So we make our way through the first couple of weeks, get to the end of September, and we could be in very good shape, or alternately, we could be feeling a little nervous about things. But so far to the good. Focus on where we are. So last I saw was USA Network has it in the US. Arsenal home against Brighton on Saturday, nice and early.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Aguna U. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also listen to our show on Apple, Spotify, and some other places. If you're only listening, try watching us on YouTube with the link in the show notes. Your homework for today is to like a tweet or a Threads post. Let us know what you're watching. Watching and or reading or watching videos or looking at images, whatever it is that's posted there. Thanks again to our sponsor, Zencastr. Check out our description for links to everything we talk about, including our sponsor and our Instagram and Twitter pages. Again, my name is Dove, and you can find me on Twitter at Dove Frankel. With me again, as always, is Keith, and you can find him in a pub watching Arsenal matches.
Come on, you Gunners.